Next we're going to be doing MC7 task 1, which is checking the battery, making sure the battery is serviceable, making sure there's enough charge in the battery, make sure there's enough electrolytes in the battery. So the first thing we need to do is remove the seat. And then remove the right hand side panel, which gives us access to the battery. So when disconnecting the battery, always disconnect the earth first. If you're not sure, it's the one with the negative sign on it. That's the earth. Also known as the ground lead. This thing, the positive, that's your live feed. So we always disconnect the earth first. When you take the leads off, put the little nuts and bolts through the leads so it keeps them together. Also stops you losing that little nut at the back. When you're disconnecting the live, it's important that you don't let either the screwdriver, because it's a crosshead, or the socket actually touch the frame. If it does, it'll earth out, it'll create a circuit and it'll spark, and it could damage the wiring loom. Or on more high performance bikes, it could actually damage the ECU, which is the brains of the bike, and it's a very expensive repair. So, took them out of the way. Disconnect the retaining strap, and then this should just slide out. There will be a wire, a tube, that's your vent pipe going all the way down, because as the bike's running, the alternator will be charging the battery and it will be releasing gas. So the gas needs to escape via that vent tube and out underneath the bike. If you accidentally kink the vent tube when you're putting it back, I have seen these batteries go round. They become round. They have a very good chance of exploding. So you need, when you're putting the battery back, make sure that the vent pipe's free, make sure it's not kinked, not trapped, and then we can reconnect the battery. So you need to, once you've removed the battery, you need to check the electrolyte level. You should be able to see the electrolyte inside each one of the chambers, and it's just above the maximum mark, so the electrolyte's fine. Now we need to check how much power or voltage that battery actually has. So we use one of these, which is a multimeter. Because it's a 12 volt battery, we need to set it to 20 volts. Then we connect the red lead to the positive and the black lead to the negative, and that gives a reading of 11.5, which is flat. So the battery needs charging. A fully charged battery should have 2.2 volts per cell. So because it's got 6 cells, 2.2 volts should be 13.2 volts when it's fully charged. You rarely get a battery that's fully charged. Usually around 12.8 is an acceptable fully charged battery. So we need to put this battery on charge before we can move on to the next step. Because the battery were flat, it were only 11.5 volts, we need to connect it to a battery charger, 12 volt battery charger. Always connect it up with the red lead to the positive and the black lead to the negative, and then switch it on. Because the needle's only just started moving, it means it was quite low. When a battery is being charged, it should be receiving around about 14 volts. put them across there. There are 13.3 volts. So that means that the battery charge is working and it's actually putting the charge into the battery. Incidentally, if you're checking whether the battery charge is working, always touch the electrodes. Never touch the clips, just to make sure that there is contact going into the electrodes, because if there isn't, there'll be power going into the clips and none going into the battery. So we'll leave that on charge for about an hour, and we'll come back and see what the reading is. Right, we've had the battery on charge for about an hour now, so we'll just test it. So it's 12.7. So yeah, it's quite close to being fully charged. So we need to refit it back in. Making sure the vent pipe. It's tucked out of the way and it's not being trapped. Right, so we need to put the rubber strap back on. So that sits in that clip there. Push it around into that clip there. Now, when you're putting the battery back on, you need to put the live feed in first. And then the earth. When we disconnected it, you take the earth off first and then the live, but when you're reconnecting it, you need to make sure you put the earth on last. Try not to trap any of the terminals as well when you're putting it back on. Just nip it up so it's tight. Make sure the terminals are tight, not rattling about. And the same with the live. Like I say, make sure that you don't allow the socket or the screwdriver, whichever you're using, to come into contact with the frame, because it'll earth out on the live.